I want to start today by throwing two grenades into the room,
Oh boy.
figuratively speaking, of course. But these are the kinds of questions that usually set the internet on fire. You know, they ruin Thanksgiving dinners and friendships. You ready?
I'm bracing myself.
Yeah.
Got my helmet on. Go ahead.
Okay. Question one. Which men should listen to women? And question two. Which women should shut up?
Wow. Okay. Yeah, you weren't kidding. Those are
Pretty loaded, right?
incredibly loaded. I mean, if you post those on social media right now, you aren't looking for a conversation. You're looking for a brawl. You're basically inviting the culture war right into your living room.
Exactly. They feel like traps, like you have to pick a side. Whatever side you pick, you're just wrong.
Yeah.
But here is the hook for today's deep dive. We have a source that argues those are actually entirely the wrong questions to be asking.
Right. And what's fascinating here is that the source doesn't just dodge the question to be polite. It pivots immediately away from the whole gender war aspect entirely.
Yeah, totally abandons it.
Right. It suggests that if you're asking, who has the power based on gender or who gets to speak based on identity, you've already lost the plot. You're playing a game that honestly has no winner.
So if those are the wrong questions, what are the right ones?
Yeah.
Because we still have to communicate with each other. We still have conflicts. And according to the material we're breaking down for you today, the real questions are actually much more mechanical.
Yeah, much more practical.
They are, when is listening required? When is speaking useful?
Yeah.
And when is silence intelligent?
It's a complete reframe. We're moving from identity politics, which is, messy and highly emotional, to pure mechanics.
Right.
Think of it like engineering. The core thesis here is that effective communication isn't about gender dynamics or power struggles at all. It's about competence, experience, and context. It's essentially a battle between ego and wisdom.
Ego versus wisdom. That sounds like a title fight in Vegas.
In a way, it is. Every difficult conversation, whether it's with your spouse, your boss, or some stranger online, is a title fight between those two things. And usually, the one you feed is the one that ends up winning.
So our mission for this deep dive is to basically hand you a toolkit. We want to look at conflict resolution not as who wins the argument, but who actually has the competence to lead the moment. We're going to break down the mechanics of why conversations fail and how to fix them using a very specific set of rules from our source material.
And honestly, I view this as a shortcut to emotional intelligence.
Oh, absolutely.
We often think emotional intelligence takes years of therapy to build, but if you can internalize these rules, these mechanics, you save yourself so much unnecessary drama. You stop crashing the car.
Let's get into the gears of this then. We have to start with listening. And the source hits us with a definition right out of the gate that honestly stopped me in my tracks. It says, listening in these contexts is not submission. It is data acquisition.
That is the critical distinction right there.
But hold on, let me play devil's advocate for a second. Because in the heat of an argument, when your blood pressure is up, silence really does feel like submission.
It does.
It feels like losing. It feels like I'm letting you punch me and I'm just standing there taking it.
But that's exactly the illusion the source is trying to shatter. That feeling that I'm losing ground if I'm not talking, that is pure ego. Think of it like a general on a battlefield.
Okay.
If the enemy is maneuvering, flanking, changing tactics, and the general just shuts his eyes, plugs his ears, and screams orders because he wants to feel dominant, he loses. Every single time.
Because he's operating blind.
Precisely. Listening is satellite imagery. It is pure strategic advantage. When you define listening as submission, you blind yourself. But when you define it as data acquisition, you suddenly become the most informed person in the room. You're gathering intel while the other person is just expending energy.
I really like that. It flips the power dynamic completely. Listening isn't passive anymore. It's tactical.
Very tactical. You cannot navigate a terrain you refuse to see.
So let's get into the specifics. The source actually provides a checklist. And I want to be clear to you listening, this isn't a moral checklist. It's not about being the nice guy. It's about logic. And it starts with when men should listen to women.
Right. And again, view this through the lens of data acquisition. The first point is, a man should listen when the topic concerns a woman's lived experience that he does not have.
This seems obvious, but it's surprisingly hard for people. I think the pushback here is usually, well, does that mean I'm not allowed to have an opinion just because I'm a man?
That's the fear, right? But look at the mechanics of it. It doesn't say agree with everything. It says listen to the data. If I haven't lived your life, I don't have your data set. If you are telling me about your autobiography and I start arguing with you about the plot, I look foolish.
Yeah, you're arguing against a data set you don't even possess.
Exactly. If you don't have the raw data, your opinion is just a hypothesis. Listening is what converts your hypothesis into a theory. And the second point is, when a decision directly impacts her.
That's just basic stakes, right? If the falling rock is going to land on my head, I should probably have a say in where we stand.
Precisely. And the third is, when she possesses relevant expertise or insight.
This is the competence piece. If she's the structural engineer and you're the accountant, and we're standing on a bridge that's making a cracking sound.
Shut up and listen to the engineer.
Exactly.
It sounds incredibly simple, but ego often overrides expertise. We've all seen it in meetings, the loudest voice syndrome. But the source is explicitly saying that competence is the only hierarchy that actually matters.
Now here is where it gets really interesting, and I think a bit more nuanced. The source says a man should listen when emotional reality needs acknowledgement rather than correction.
Oh, correction. That is the key word
I
there.
think a lot of us have that instinct. I know I definitely do. Someone shares a feeling like, I'm worried about this, or this makes me sad. And my immediate instinct is to fix it with logic. To say, well, you shouldn't be worried because of X, Y, and Z.
The fixer instinct.
Yeah.
And it comes from a good place, usually. You want to solve the problem for them. But the source is arguing that emotional reality is itself a form of data.
Can you break that down a bit?
Yeah.
How exactly is an emotion data?
Think about it like a dashboard in a car. If your passenger suddenly screams, "Brake!" that is their emotional reality. It is a vital data point that they perceive imminent danger.
Right. And if I turn to them and calmly say, actually, according to the physics of this vehicle and the friction coefficient of the road, we have 40 feet of stopping distance.
You're going to crash.
We're absolutely going to crash.
Exactly. You're debating the physics while completely ignoring the panic. Emotional reality just means acknowledging the panic is real, regardless of the physics. You have to address the panic before you can address the car. If someone says, "I feel unsafe," and you quote crime statistics at them, you aren't listening. You're correcting.
And you're missing the data point that the person feels unsafe, which determines how they're going to act next.
Right.
That leads right into the last point on the list. When feedback is being offered regarding safety or dignity.
Non-negotiable. If someone tells you you're standing on their foot, you don't debate the placement of your shoe. You just listen and move.
Okay, so that's the list for men. But what I appreciate about this source and why I think it's actually useful, not just a one-sided lecture, is that it applies the exact same rigorous logic to when women should listen to men. It's not a one-way street.
No, not at all. And this is crucial for the wisdom part of the equation. If this were just men shut up, it would be pure ideology. But the source says listening is mutual intelligence. So the checklist for women mirrors the logic. First, when the topic concerns male lived experience.
Which is only fair. Just as men don't have the internal data on being a woman, women don't have the internal data on being a man.
Correct. There are pressures, social dynamics, and biological realities to the male experience that are largely opaque to women. Listening fills that gap. Second, when he has direct expertise or competence. If he knows how to fix the plumbing and you don't, his gender is irrelevant. His competence is the leader in that moment.
And the third one mirrors the previous list too, when he is expressing emotional reality rather than asserting dominance.
This is a subtle but incredibly powerful distinction, expressing emotional reality versus asserting dominance. We have to be honest here. Men are often socialized to not show vulnerability. So when a man does express an internal emotional reality, whether that's fear, uncertainty, sadness, it is vital to listen. That is rare data.
But the caveat is asserting dominance.
Right. Because if that emotion is just aggression or volume or intimidation used to silence others, that's not vulnerability. That's a power play. That is dominance. The source asks us to be wise enough to tell the difference between a man genuinely sharing his internal state and a man just trying to control the room.
And finally, when a shared decision requires full information, you can't make a joint decision if you've only heard half the briefing.
Exactly. So the real takeaway here isn't men need to be quiet or women need to be quiet. It's that listening completes the picture. It's about building a high-resolution map of reality. If you aren't listening, you're working with a low-res map.
Listening is mutual intelligence. I really love that concept. It makes listening active rather than passive. But that brings up the flip side. If I'm doing all this active listening, that means I'm not talking. And for a lot of people, that thought is terrifying.
It is. We are trained to think that silence is weakness, or that silence is erasure.
Right. I'm being silenced. We hear that all the time.
And look, in a political context, that can certainly be true. But in interpersonal mechanics in a relationship or on a team, the source argues that silence is strategic. It actually protects your credibility.
There's a line in the source that made me laugh out loud. It says, the phrase shut up often reflects frustration with noise, not gender.
It's blunt, but it's very real. Sometimes people are just adding noise to the system.
So let's look at what they call the universal checklist for silence. This applies to everyone. Man, woman, non-binary, the CEO, the intern. When should you zip it?
First and foremost, when speaking is driven by impulse, not clarity.
That's the tweet before you think rule.
It really is. If the urge to speak feels like an itch or a burn or a compulsion, it's almost always impulse. Clarity feels different. Clarity is calm. Impulse is urgent. If you feel like you have to say it right this second or you'll explode, you probably shouldn't say it.
Second on the list. When emotion is dysregulated, we're going to talk a lot more about regulation in a minute, but essentially if you're seeing red.
If you are seeing red, if you're shaking, if you're in a panic spiral, your cognitive brain is effectively offline. Anything you say in that state will just be noise. It will just be an exhaust fume of your anxiety.
Third condition. When you lack relevant knowledge.
Ugh, the era of the hot take. Everyone feels the need to have an opinion on everything immediately, but the source is saying if you don't actually know, silence is the smartest move. It keeps you from revealing your ignorance. It preserves your status.
And this next one, oh man, this one hits close to home for a lot of us. When one is repeating talking points without understanding.
The parrot problem. We see this constantly. People reciting slogans or jargon or arguments they heard on the news or from some influencer. But if you scratch the surface, if you just ask why, they completely crumble.
It's like, I'm saying the words, but I don't really know what they mean.
Exactly. And when you do that, you aren't communicating, you're broadcasting. And usually you're broadcasting your own lack of depth. Silence is far more respectable than regurgitation.
And the final condition for silence. When the goal is dominance, not resolution.
If you are speaking just to make yourself look big and the other person looks small, you have left the realm of wisdom. You are firmly in the realm of ego. And ego destroys connection.
The source also gives us some hard breaks, like indicators for when to stop speaking immediately, mid-sentence even.
Yes. If you realize you are speaking to win rather than understand, that's a hard break. Or if you are escalating rather than resolving.
Escalating is pretty easy to spot. The volume goes up, the speed goes up, the insults come out.
Right. And the distinction between reacting and responding is key here. A reaction is a reflex, like when the doctor hits your knee with a hammer. A response is a choice. If you are just bouncing off the other person's energy, they yell, so you yell, stop talking, just regroup.
Okay, so we've established that listening is gathering data, and silence is strategic. But if everyone is listening and being silent, who is leading? How do we actually define authority?
This is where we deconstruct respect. The source says respect is not automatic to gender or title. It is earned through coherence.
Coherence, that's an interesting word choice. Usually we talk about confidence or dominance. Coherence sounds physics-based, like a laser beam versus a light bulb. What does the source actually mean by that?
Coherence implies integration. It means your inside matches your outside. The source lists the pillars of this: competence, integrity, lived experience, and demonstrated stability.
Demonstrated stability is a big one. It's really hard to respect someone who is falling apart or exploding every 5 minutes.
Because stability implies that you can hold the weight of the situation. If you are unstable, you are just adding chaos. True authority comes from being a stabilizing force. Think about gravity. The object with the most mass has the most gravity. In a conversation, the person with the most stability has the most gravity.
And this leads to the gender-neutral standard the source proposes. If a woman is knowledgeable and grounded, men should listen. If a man is knowledgeable and grounded, women should listen. If either is arrogant, uninformed, or reactive, they should pause.
It democratizes leadership completely based on merit and state of mind. It strips away the identity politics and just asks who is actually capable of handling this moment.
There's also a great myth-busting moment here. Strength is not loudness.
A critical point. We so often mistake volume for confidence. But usually, loudness is just panic with the gain turned up. Real strength, the source argues, is maturity. And maturity is knowing when to speak and when to listen.
Okay, we've covered the mechanics. Listening, silence, authority. Now we get to the real climax of this deep dive. The source calls this the ultimate rule of communication.
This is the takeaway. If you remember nothing else from today's discussion, remember this formula.
The source says the conversation should be guided by the person who meets two specific criteria simultaneously. And honestly, when I read this, it felt like a light bulb went on. What are the criteria?
Criterion 1, they must possess the most relevant information. Criterion 2, they must possess the most regulated nervous system.
Okay, let's unpack this. Relevant information plus a regulated nervous system. We talked about info, but we really need to go deep on the nervous system part. Why is that a strict requirement for leadership?
We need to get biological here for a second. This isn't just, hey, be calm. This is pure physiology. When your nervous system is dysregulated, when you're in that fight or flight mode, your body is flooded with cortisol and adrenaline.
The stress hormones.
Right. And when that happens, blood literally leaves your prefrontal cortex. That's the front part of your brain responsible for logic, empathy, complex problem solving, future planning. It goes totally offline.
So you're saying physically, biologically, you are incapable of leading in that state.
Exactly. You revert to animal instinct. You might be the CEO, you might be the smartest person in the room on paper, but if you are dysregulated, you are just a scared mammal with a title. You are operating from your lizard brain. You can fight, you can flee, or you can freeze, but you cannot lead.
That is terrifying. Because think about how many meetings or arguments are led by the person who is the most stressed out.
Exactly. We constantly let the person with the most urgency drive the car. We mistake their panic for passion. But urgency is often just a sign of dysregulation. The source is saying, look for the person who knows the terrain and has their hands steady on the wheel. That is your leader for that moment.
So if I have all the data, I know the budget backwards and forwards, I have the facts, but I'm screaming and hyperventilating.
You are dangerous. You are a loose cannon. You cannot integrate that data into a wise decision.
And on the flip side, if I'm totally zen, super calm, very regulated, but I have absolutely zero clue what I'm talking about.
Then you're just pleasantly useless. You're a passenger. You need both.
Yeah.
You need the data and the regulated vessel to carry it safely.
This explains so many bad interactions I've had.
Yeah.
Usually have the loudest person leading or the most emotional person steering the ship.
Yeah.
And the source is saying that is just a recipe for disaster.
It creates total chaos. The source says, used well, listening and silence create coherence. Used poorly, they create chaos.
And what I love is that this role shifts. It's fluid. In one moment, regarding the budget, it might be the female CFO leading because she has the info and she's calm.
Yeah.
And the next moment regarding a client crisis, it might be the male account manager.
Exactly. Leadership flows to where the coherence is. It's not static. It's not about who wears the pants. It's about who has the regulated brain right now.
So to bring this all home, we started with which men should listen to women, which is a question designed to start a fight. And we ended up with who has the regulated nervous system, a question designed to solve a problem.
It's a journey from ego to wisdom. Ego asks, do they respect me? Am I winning? Am I dominant? Is my voice the loudest? Wisdom asks, do I have the data? Am I steady? Is this useful? Is my brain actually online?
The source material really challenges us to look inward. It's so easy to point fingers and say, he needs to listen to me, or she talks too much. It's much harder to ask yourself, is my silence intelligent right now? Or is my speaking actually useful?
And that final point, listening, is rooted in the nervous system as much as the intellect. You cannot listen if you are in fight or flight mode. You physically can't do it. Your ears might be working, but your brain isn't integrating any of the data. So effective communication is actually a physiological act. You have to regulate your body to be a wise communicator.
That is such a powerful takeaway. It's not just about being smart. It's about being grounded. Before you can manage the conversation, you have to manage your own biology.
Precisely. If you can't regulate yourself, you simply can't regulate the room.
So here is our final thought for you to mull over. The next time you find yourself in a heated conversation, maybe it's at work, maybe it's at the dinner table, and you feel that familiar urge to jump in, to correct, to win, stop.
Just pause, take a breath.
And ask yourself this question. Not, am I right? But ask yourself, is my nervous system regulated enough to be the guide right now?
Because if the answer is no, the smartest thing you can say is nothing.
And that is a wrap on this deep dive. Thanks for listening, and listening well.
Until next time.